Heiges.
Good morning, Peggy.
And thank you so much for staying a little bit longer. You were here for a mission group meeting.
Yes.
And I think we had this date a while back because,
yes.
you know, I asked you one time and you knew you were coming. So this has been a couple months in the, we've had it scheduled.
Yes.
So can you just begin to tell us a little bit about where you're from, your background, siblings, your schooling, grade
Sure.
school, high school, whatever?
Well, I grew up in Santa Cruz, and that's how I know the Adrian Dominicans.
Oh.
So I'm a true child of the Pacific, growing up with the redwoods, the deer, the Portuguese and Italian fishermen. Everybody, they were all my classmates, not the deer. Although once they were. And
sure.
It was just wonderful, and I loved our sisters very much, and I loved life very much, and I love floating in the Pacific Ocean, and I'm part amphibian, and it's just a wonderful place to grow up and know the world. And I always thought about that ocean, and Santa Cruz is on Monterey Bay, actually, but I always thought about the ocean going everywhere, and I studied globes all the time.
Interesting.
And the water connected everything, and I always thought about that when I was floating around in the Pacific and paddling in the waves. And I really became a global citizen that way.
Interesting. We'll get into the global citizen a little bit later. Siblings, brothers and sisters?
One brother who's a medical doctor, but then two families adopted each other, and they had a boy and a girl, and my mom had a boy and a girl, and we all bonded together. And so I had two brothers and one sister.
Okay.
One blood brother.
Okay.
But we're all just joined at the hip.
Sure. Good. Yeah. And you went to school out there?
Yes, I did, the whole time.
With
college.
Adrian Dominicans or where?
Well, through grade school and high school, yeah. But in college, College of Notre Dame and Belmont, and then later on, of course, I entered in Siena Heights. And
what Adrian Dominican did you first meet?
I met Margaret Gray, Sister Anele, in the 4th grade, and you know what? It was the year she made her final profession. And she went at Christmas time home to Adrian and then came back with the ring. And of course, yours truly had to be the first one to say something about it. We all noticed it. But I said, "Oh, sister, you got a wedding ring."
Did you get married?
Well, I don't know. No, I didn't say that, Peg. But I said, she said, "Yes, but I made my vows, final profession." I said, "Oh, well, can you tell us the story?" And she did, you know.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, and I'll bet we kept her talking and questioned her for 2 hours. I think we went through arithmetic, through English,
I was
through
going
religion,
to say,
through geography.
Did you really want to know, or you wanted to avoid the subjects? No, I think you did.
Slightly, a little of both. You know, I hesitated for a moment, but I think mostly I wanted to know the subject of her life. And so did Paul Conrado and Bonnie Cox and Anita Giudice and all the people sitting around me. And you know, I'm still in touch with all these people. We all get together.
Okay, and then you just took her message and what she said and went on with your life. So then you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
Belmont in Notre Dame. That would be the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. And I was thinking about joining there, but I know that didn't compute. I was an Adrian Dominican by then in my soul, I think. My heart. And they lived at 105 Silvar Street, not the kind of very nice convent there is now. It was this old 3-story house, and I went in there to help the sisters, and probably was pesty as well as helpful.
Not Anele.
Well, I wanted to know things.
Good.
And you know, one day, Sister Marie Charles, now deceased, years, I wanted to know the rule. Can you believe this? Well, I was always curious, mentally curious, as well as emotionally curious and everything. And do you know, she sat on the front porch of 105 Silvar Street, and she read me the rule of St. Augustine.
How old were you?
By then, I was probably a freshman in high school. And maybe sophomore, I don't know, something like that. And then we talked. I'll bet we sat there and talked for 3 hours. And I asked her all kinds of questions. And she said, "Are you thinking of becoming a sister?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I like boys an awful lot. I'm not really sure I want to be a sister, but I would like to be your friend."
Oh, nice. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But
So
I was thinking about it, having fights about it. 'Cause
resisting the invitation.
Absolutely.
Resisting.
I probably was kicking and screaming against it at first.
So what happened that you were able to make a commitment and say yes, whether or not you stayed? You just said yes to go to the next.
Make the next move?
Yeah, make the next move into.
I just think it
entering.
was grace.
Yeah.
Just grace.
Yeah.
Because I was still loving boys too much.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great, excuse me. And they were usually strong swimmers. And I liked that, to go way out in the waves and all. And I didn't want any sissy stuff, you know.
Sounds like Anele again, way out into the deep.
Well, my dad had taken me out on his shoulders as a young child. And riding around on his shoulders is where I first got the idea that I was a global citizen. And then one day, I don't know where a big wave came from in the Pacific, because Balboa named it the Pacific for a reason. It was very peaceful, flat, this and that. And a big wave appeared, and my dad called me Anele. And he said, "Anele, we're going to get rolled. Hang on." And he held my ankles like this, and a big wave rolled us. And I could still feel his hand on my ankle. He never let me go. And that became the image for me of God hanging on.
Wow.
I can still feel his hand on my ankle. And the last thing he yelled before he himself went under was, "Hang on, Anele." And I think God says, "Hang on, Anele."
So then it was 1953?
I
September 5th?
Yes, I graduated in 52, high school. 53 I entered, yes.
Entered, okay. Yep. Coming all across the United States from
Yes.
California?
Yes.
That's an experience. Did you come to Adrian before that to see what it was
Oh,
like?
no.
Oh, no?
I never made that trip before that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I didn't know anybody and everything. No, I just came.
You just came.
Of course, I met a boy on the way on his way to Annapolis.
Oh, he was great.
Yes, he invited me to Annapolis, and I thought, "Oh, well, let me think on that. I'll get back to you." I never did, of course.
So you came to Adrian, and how was that initial experience here on this campus?
It was a shockwave for two reasons. Not because I didn't like the people, but physically it was flat as far as I could see.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I grew up in mountains. I didn't know what to do with all the flat. And I found it actually disorienting with not having mountains in the distance. But then the second reason was, now you don't get to laugh, Peg O'Flynn.
Okay.
You don't get to laugh, okay.
Promise.
Everybody was so Catholic. And I grew up, my father was Protestant, and I went to a Catholic school. I love the Catholics, don't get me wrong. But I was interacting with other people too, because of my father, I think. And everybody was so Catholic. That's all I can say. The land was flat and Catholics.
Were you real Catholic? Whatever.
I was.
Whatever everyone was Catholic was. What do you mean by that? Everyone was Catholic.
Well, they talked holier than I was.
Okay, so that makes you Catholic?
I don't know, Peggy. Let's not go there. I don't even know. I should never have said that. This is the wrong thing.
It's interesting. But that was your experience. That was very real for you.
Very real. And don't get me wrong. I loved being Catholic.
Okay, I got it. You loved being Catholic. All right, so now you're in formation, and it's you're going to ministry. And where was your first experience in ministry as an Adrian Dominican?
Yes. Very soon after I entered, I got sent to Homewood as a postulant.
Okay.
And Sister Dennis Gallagher was the superior back in those days. And Homewood, Illinois was a good place to go. And Sister Joseph Anthony got assigned to take care of the postulant. That was me. And that would be Anne Beauvais. So I call her my other postulant mistress.
Okay.
Or maybe she's my real postulant mistress. I lived with her for a year or 10 months or whatever it was. And she just helped me out so much.
Nice. You remember,
it was lovely.
You remember that.
Oh, very well.
We don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then from Homewood, is there another ministry let's not get into the global one yet, but another ministry that kind of helped prepare you for, where you are at this point in your life?
Yes. It's where I was when Vatican II broke open.
Okay.
And Anastasia McNichols was our coordinators back
West,
then. And in the houses, Pat Walter and Marion Castelluccio, me, Maria Romero, Esther Ortega. We were the 5 usual suspects for just couldn't wait for Vatican II. Couldn't wait. And then there were 5 others who could have certainly waited. And it was the loveliest house because we respected each other, but it was 5 that were dying to not moving out that door that fast, and 5 of us that were at the door ready to go. And
nice image. Mm-hmm.
We all loved each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Anastasia McNichols, being the coordinator, of course, did a beautiful job. I think she was riding a bucking bronco, if you really want to know, but she rode it very well. Lovely. And in fact, Pat Walter and I had supper with her last night, and we were laughing about all the times that the things that happened, and we were just laughing right out loud. It was just wonderful to reminisce.
It is, to go back and see as we were maturing in those experiences.
Yes.
So as we look at your various ministries, I know you're involved on a global scene. One experience I remember was 9/11.
Oh.
I just talk. This is how far you've reached out, is the way I took it. But you were sleeping. You probably were out late at night, doing the preaching like you did. And then you get a call from a colleague in Russia. Is that correct?
Moscow.
Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Anele, what's going on? What? I just woke up.
Are you still alive? He said.
Tell him.
Anele, he couldn't say my name. Are you still alive? I'm calling to see that you're still alive. Because all they saw was the smoke and things, not the whole city. And I said, Yuri Puchkov, he was my counterpart in Russia. I said, Yuri, what are you talking about? I hadn't awakened yet to the news. He said, go turn your television on.
I know.
And I did, and the rest is history.
Right.
Ran right outside to run into Dot Savage, and we ran over to the National Council of Churches across the street. They had a plan for activating the ecumenical groups, but they didn't have enough. Dot and I helped them just take orders and surround mosques. And not one Muslim person got killed in the city that day. I don't think it was an accident.
I just think the connection that you had, and that from Russia you found out about something that was happening in your city, which was interesting. You've had very many experiences, but how could you answer this? How did you become a global soul?
From both my Catholic mother and my Protestant grandmother and my dad. My Protestant grandmother and grandfather, and I didn't think of them as Protestants or Catholic.
No,
they were just my family. Went to China and around there. They were world souls, and they came back and they'd bring me things from all over the world. And the first I remember was from Mexico, a Oaxaca blanket, but I couldn't say it. It was my hockey blanket. And I carried it everywhere. You couldn't get it away from me, hardly to wash it even. And then my mom, she took me to Mass and everything, and we prayed. And both my dad and my mom would hear my prayers. And then my dad would take me in the ocean. He was the Southern Pacific doctor, and he would take me with him in the ocean. Well, the ocean was something else, but we'd float around. I told you that. Yeah. But he'd take me to visit the Mexican laborers, and I could see that they were very poor. And my dad and grandfather both used to help them. And I'll never forget the time my dad saw a Mexican laborer. He had appendicitis that was about to burst. And the man didn't have any money. And my grandpa and father always just helped him. They never charged him any money. They gave away thousands of dollars every year. The two of them, they just helped people.
Was your grandfather a doctor too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My grandfather, father, and brother, all of them, the whole family's medical. Well, he went out there and he picked this man up in his arms. And he said, Arnold, he said, get in the front seat, honey. And he put the man in the back seat. And I wish we had cell phones in those days, but he got to the hospital and he called up 3 of his friends, Eder, Anderson, and something else, doctors, and he said, Saturday it was, you come right away and we have to save a life and you're not going to send a bill. Mm-hmm. And he called him, and I remember being at his elbow at the receiving desk, and he said, take care of this man. And then he said, send the bill to me. Dr. Heiges. Well, it was probably thousands of dollars, and I bet he paid it too. He always did. Mm. And they say, they were good doctors, and they did save the person's life. I never forgot that. Well, I think I became a global soul, and I became a soul who wanted to give it all away and help other people. But I won't give the farm away, don't worry. But I don't care about my stuff.
No.
And it's like, all these influences came very early from my family. And my father, grandfather was mayor of the town so I got leadership ideas. Mm-hmm. And I learned how to put things together, and I watched my dad get the whole blood bank system in the whole western states going. And then there was no hospital, because when it was time for me to be born, I was almost born in the San Julian Canyon. And my dad from then on made sure there was a hospital in town. Mm-hmm. And they all just were leaders like that, and their murals are still up on the hospital walls outside. Wow. You know, I'd love to take some. I've taken Mary Lou Head there, but I'd love to take some Adrian Dominicans to the hospital walls to say, see, I'm not kidding.
My father was here.
Yeah.
So you're presently in ministry.
Yes.
Where?
For about a year now, or a year and a half, I've been on the board of the Center for Earth Ethics. I stopped teaching at the Jesuit University in Jersey City, which was a commute over to Jersey City to move into the Center for Earth Ethics. And I always saw Mother Earth kind of the same as anti-sex trafficking in a way, mm-hmm. in the sense of, if you could rape women and girls, you can rape our mother, mm-hmm. the earth. Mm-hmm. And in that way, I make powerful connections. I'm always a connector. And Corinna, that would be Al Gore's daughter, but she's wonderful in her own right. She's a doctor of jurisprudence.
She was on, there was a video or something with her in it.
Oh, yeah, probably several of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, she wanted me to be on her board. And by a fluke, if you will, I was giving a talk on the doctrine of discovery, which is about indigenous people and the papal bulls that stand beneath the explorers of Europe being able to take over indigenous lands in this continent and everywhere. And she was there when I gave the talk. And so was one of the chiefs in the Midwest, mm-hmm. Teokas and Ghost Horse, and they said, oh my goodness, didn't think we'd hear a Catholic sister talking like this. I said, you mean saying that certain papal bulls were evil? Well, they were. And it was a Borgia Pope, Alexander VI, who said to Columbus and the others, so we're not so much for Columbus Day, that you can take any lands not held by white people, mm-hmm. and that others can be enslaved, and they can be held in slavery in perpetuity. And in perpetuity is there, it's Latin. And I knew some Latin, and I started to read it in Latin. Then I got the translations, and it made me cry. It just made me cry. As a Catholic, I didn't know all that, and Catholics don't know this. No. But I think I'm finding a humble and a polite way to talk about a totally impolite subject. Mm-hmm. And then at the UNDP, at the United Nations, one of the 13 indigenous...
What's the UNDP? What's
United
UNDP?
Nations Development Program.
Okay.
And it's very wonderful in the world. in the United Nations and its agencies, UNESCO, UNDP does well, but an indigenous grandmother at the United Nations came to me. She had known me before, and she said, "You're the one, I saw you in a dream." She said, "I want you to help get rid of, rescind the papal bulls, 3 of them, that stand beneath the doctrine of discovery." And I just looked at her. I looked at her. "Rescind papal bulls? Grandmother, what?" And she said, "I don't even know what you're talking about, and I'm so ashamed to say it, Peggy. I didn't know what the doctrine of discovery was, as many Catholics." I said, you have to explain to me what you even mean." She wrote me a 3-page letter by hand, explaining it to me, and I couldn't believe it. And she called me after that. She said, "You're the one, you work on this." And she was rather pushing on me, a little pushy, I'd say, but then the whole doctrine is pushy and not nice. And I've even went to Santo Domingo to ZMR, Mende,
Right.
final profession, and went in the place where Columbus landed, and I did ceremony and prayed that we all could learn. And where do we go from here on? Where do we go from here on? Nobody's going to give back that land. Can't. And so we're really struggling with this. I was just up in Lake Onondaga, and there was a Jesuit scholar and a Dominican scholar. There, I was the Dominican researcher. And we talked. And
do you mean up in Michigan?
In upstate New York, Lake
New York,
Onondaga and the Finger Lakes, where much of this started out for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the longest extant democracy. And both the Jesuit and the Dominican asked forgiveness. As members of religious orders currently in the church, and that we would try and help. And we knew that they were right in what they were saying about the doctrine of discovery, and invite everybody. Thank you, Peggy. Excuse me, I didn't mean to do this. I wish you could turn that camera off for a minute.
No, that's all right. You're making it real.
Yeah, I'm making it real, I'm afraid. So that's the rest of my life, to help this, and I thank God.
Are you going to be here on Monday? When we celebrate Monday?
Yes, I'm coming back for it.
You're going home
October
and then
I'm going home tomorrow because I
thought it was this Monday, the 23rd. Oh,
no, Peggy.
Columbus
October
Day.
I'm talking Columbus Day.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to wear my 5-direction skirt that my Ojibwe chief in the Michigan region gave me. But anyway, that's that. And grandmother and the Holy Spirit used grandmother to call me to work on this the rest of my life. I don't think I have time to die.
Oh, that's good.
But I think that I'm going to do it anyway.
I don't think you have a choice.
I think that's okay with me.
But that's wonderful.
But use well what's left.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
So
it grows from the other.
So you've got to focus. And you've had many global experiences, as I think back when you said you loved globes as a little kid.
Yeah.
God, you started to be inspired at the very beginning.
Yes, it was my grandparents that helped me love globes. And I do have original thoughts now. But at first, I had my grandparents' thoughts, and my mother and my father, and they grew me. And my father, at 5 years old, he says, "Think for yourself. Think for yourself. You have a brain. What do you really think?" Bless his heart.
I can't imagine you without your own thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I take that as a compliment.
You're always filled with what gives you energy and passion for what you're all about? Where does that come from within you?
God, the Holy Spirit. And I've been so fortunate as to have good health. But my doctor father also made sure that I ate the right things. And he always said, "Anel, eat a little bit of everything in the store." He said that'll give you the broad range of the food that you need to build your bones and be strong. And much to my dismay at the time, he daily fed me doses of cod liver oil when I was a kid, and I'm sure that helped me. I was so glad when it became mint flavored.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Is there something else you'd like to share with us that might surprise us, or if we knew that about you?
This, I'm going to read it from Ilia Delio. She wrote a sentence, and it's been my whole life. But Thomas Berry first taught me because I had a private directed study from him.
Oh.
And I'll tell you one story. But she said, and it says it for me, one sentence. Unless fundamental levels of consciousness change, we cannot attract a new reality. Mm-hmm. She's using the attractor, so the consciousness is real, yes, and alive, and attract it. Building bridges that connect to new realities has been and become even more my whole life's chief work, so that I'm looking conceptually at how we change cultures, how we change values. I was even in the Values Caucus at the UN a long time, the head of it. And that became my job at the United Nations, and I think I picked up on that in Russia. Mm-hmm. Just, you know.
You situated yourself at the United Nations for many years.
Yeah, and I'm still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still there. But even then, I was invited to come there by the president of the International Public Policy Institute. I later became the president for a few years, but way back when I was in campus ministry in Dearborn at U of M.
Oh, so you were in camp. We kind of brushed over that one, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but it set me up because I could practice as a Catholic. I was preaching and I was doing everything in the campus ministry. I could have never done in a parish. Never. And it wasn't that we were renegades or acting disrespectfully. We were always respectful. But we did more things. We had more freedom. And I guess I needed that kind of an atmosphere and thrived in it.
Yeah. I think if you didn't have it, you'd go looking for it. The freedom that you needed in order to be the preacher you
kept me Catholic. And I did like being a Catholic. But I'll never forget my private, to get back to Thomas Berry. He taught me so much about the living universe and the consciousness I needed. And I went up there. He was just a subway ride away for years, and I'd go up on the subway to see him. But I have to tell you this, I think I felt like Jesus at the Last Supper when he was with Philip, because Thomas, it so happened that Mary Perninsky and I were co-chairing a chapter assembly in the Mid-Atlantic chapter, way back then, Atlanta. Well, I said to Thomas Berry, who took his name from Thomas Aquinas, I said, Tom, will you just help us think about charism? We're going to have some workshops and things about that we go deeper into our living charism, blah, 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 and all this. And I could see his hand. He was driving me to the subway, taking me home for the last time. I could see his hand tighten on the wheel. I thought, oh my goodness, I just stepped on a landmine. I said, Tom, what did I say? I can see your fist tightening around the wheel. He said, Anele, just remember that it's the universe that has the charism. And your congregation's charism is derivative of a living universe, because you're a living organism of the Dominican order. And the consciousness you share with universe and our Mother Earth is the same consciousness, and that the universe is inclining toward you. And you must indeed cherish your charism. You've told me a lot about it, he said. But just remember that the universe is primary.
Indeed cherish your charism.
Indeed cherish your charism.
Indeed.
Because it's connected to the consciousness of the universe. And then I remember Jean Denemy, Lord rest her soul, writing a book about the stars. The poems from the stars. We are from the stars. Well, now we say it, and we all quote Ilia Delio, but those folks were saying it long ago.
It took time.
Yes,
remember that house you were in? Some were with it, and some were not with the changes in the church.
That's a perfect example, and yet we all got along.
Sure.
We loved each other. Tried hard to understand each other, didn't always quite make it, but then we grew into it.
Right.
And so we
Right.
grow into our charism, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
We grow into our maturity. We grow into our lives and being who we are. And I'll never forget learning that I just have to be in my own skin. I'm weighing whether I'm going to say where I learned that. I probably should say, in case it helps somebody else, because I'm so happy now. I've been in AA for 29 years, and I love it. And I love being in my own skin. And I love God and the Holy Spirit and my own call. The hardest time being in religion was being one of the vice presidents of the religious NGOs at the United Nations at 9/11, and having to go around talking to people. But I love working interreligiously because Jesus doesn't mind. I figure Jesus is a friend of everybody. I stand in the mission of Jesus. I'm an Adrian Dominican. I know very well who I am, and I love being who I am. But I love working with other people and letting and seeing them just as they are. I don't try and change them. It's useless anyway.
And other people have assisted us in our own development and who we are. We are part of all those who we have encountered.
Yeah.
So we had a wonderful encounter with you today. I'm sorry that it's calling it to an end. We can finish on our own.
Yes.
But thank you, Anele, for what you are about globally, nationally, congregation-wise. We are truly blessed by your presence with us.
Thank you.
And thank God you left California and came to this Catholic
I'm glad
environment.
Too. And that guy on the train going to Annapolis, don't worry about him.
Forget about him.
That was
Let
just
it go.
dessert.
Yeah. Okay.
But and I want to use this chance just to thank the congregation and the sisters for paying my tuition at Columbia, where I could meet all these world people.
Wonderful. And
Thanks.
you shared that.
Thanks, congregation.
Yeah. Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you.
Safe travels home. Bye-bye.
Thank you.